Oh, let's talk about some writing basics and tips. Ba-dum-bum. Okay. That's what it says it is. But this class that I have listed here is totally wrong. Because this is for like every class that I teach. So just ignore that. Okay, here's some things you need to know as we go through this. Most of these rules and tips are going to be relevant to every kind of writing that you can think of. Some of them are even relevant to like if you're writing fiction, but certainly they're all relevant to if you're writing academically or technically. But things that are only relevant to APA style are going to be in blue. You're not always necessarily writing in APA style. There's also Chicago. There's American Medical Association, AMA style. It's really close to APA style, so most of the things you'll see in APA are also the same as AMA. And then if you're submitting a paper to a journal, they've all got their own silly like style manuals too. Nobody can just decide to use like any of the existing styles. Each journal is like, well, we use APA except every third word has to be in all caps or something like that. So, stuff in blue, important if you're writing an APA. If you know that's not what you're using, then you can ignore it if necessary. Oh, and then this is a John Legend joke. I know he's not popular anymore. It's fine. But there's nobody else that has that last name. So this joke, it still has to work. It just has to work. Okay. At the word level, we're going to build up from word to sentence to paragraph to entire paper. And so we're just going to start at the word level here. At the word level, an APA thing that you need to know is you shouldn't use contractions. Don't use contractions. Or I guess I should say do not use contractions. So if you say something like, we can't discern from the sample size, if you're, what the actual effect is, you need to say, we cannot discern from this sample size. Contractions aren't what you want to use. It's a problem for me. I use contractions all the time in my writing because probably I use contractions all the time in my speech. And I'm always catching contractions that I throw in. But, just so basically what I'm saying is make a mistake. Sure. We're going to talk about editing later on in this. But if you're going back and you're editing something, just remember one thing to keep your eye out for is no contractions. Okay, another thing that you want to focus on is don't try to make yourself or your paper sound smart by using big words just for the sake of using big words. It's not going to help. You can sound smart by using small words. And the way that you sound smart by using small words is understanding what you're writing about and presenting what you're writing about in a way that your reader can also understand what you're writing about. That's it. That's how you sound smart. You don't need to, use those $10 words all the time to sound smart. Sometimes people don't, that you're communicating to might not even know the large word. And so is it worth it? Nah. Sometimes if you have this in your vocabulary, like if you're just a person that knows a lot of words and you use a lot of varied different things to say, well, you can do that because you'll use it in a way that sounds natural. But what you don't want to do is highlight a word and then go to a thesaurus and figure out another word for it because it may look not great. And I think a lot of people, especially when they're writing academically, think that they need to like sound academic just by putting large words in their work. And that's absolutely not true. No way. I mean, maybe if you're doing something for an English class, you want to vary up, the words you're using. But what you're doing academically when you're writing is conveying ideas. And the best way to convey the ideas is to clearly state what you want to say. And if that's with small words and short sentences, that's how it is. The reader's going to understand what you're saying. So it's okay to use small words. You want to be the person saying Eric was chased by the one-eyed beast instead of Eric was chased by the monocular beast. Because it sounds weird and clunky. It's not really used exactly in the right way. Like one-eyed is a synonym for monocular, but it's not totally right. Doesn't 100% fit. You could use cyclopean, but like only if that's a word that you use. If you use cyclopean, maybe put it in. Try to cut out the words very and so. And then other adjectives and adverbs in academic writing aren't great. So adjectives and adverbs are difficult to get away from because they're necessary sometimes. Don't overuse them in academic writing. Probably shouldn't overuse them in fiction writing either, but it's more accepted there. But definitely very and so are words that you just want to cut out. Just don't use them. And the reason for this is they're intensifying something. So you're going to say it is very important. Or this research is very important. Why is it very important? You know what I mean? Like, tell us why it's very important. Was it some of the first research that was done on that topic? If it was, you should say that. Is it because it made people think about things in a new way? Say that. Up until this point, research had been going in this direction, and then with this study, it took a totally different turn. If you're writing about just like arguments or ideas, you can do that too. It doesn't have to be data all the time. It can be like, people were thinking about diversity and inclusivity on the basis of age and ethnicity and all this. And then once X person started writing about something, we realized, there's also neurodiversity is something we should be considering too. And so maybe that's what you're talking about, is how neurodiversity went kind of under the radar for a long time. You could say it was very important, or it was so great that this person wrote that, but that's not really telling why it's so great. Like, we'll understand the very and the so component of it when you explain why it's important. And what I've got here is they're sloppy, they're intangible, they never add anything. Because it could be like just your own opinion too. If it's your opinion why something is very important and you can't really back it up with a good fact of why it's important, then maybe you just realize that you're the only person that thinks that's important. And other people can think it's important too. But if you can't highlight why, then maybe it's not so important to everybody. Use actual data, percentages, effect sizes to emphasize this. Like I said, use changes in the way that research is done, changes in the way that people think about things, changes in policy, whatever. We can use very in conversation, of course, like if you're presenting it. I do all the time, and then I try to back it up with something. But when you're writing, just back it up. Don't use the very and the so. Here's just a couple style things. The possessive form of Thomas is Thomas's. You still use the apostrophe S. A lot of people get a little confused on this, right? Because like you learn that when it's a plural thing, you put the apostrophe, but you don't put the second S. And that's true. But I think people overgeneralize this to names that end in S. James, Thomas. If it's just one person, here's James, and this is James's backpack, you still put the S. So it's a weird little, like, it's confusing, right? Like, I get it. We all get why this is weird. So just highlighting that the possessive form of Thomas is Thomas's with the S still there. But of course, if it's a pluralized thing and you're showing possession for a pluralized thing, like if it's the last name, the Joneses, this is the Joneses' luggage, well, then it's plural and possessive, and so you only do the apostrophe. It's crazy. English is totally messed up. But, whatever. Those are the rules. And then another thing with apostrophes is it's 90s and A's without the apostrophe, not 90s and A's with the apostrophe. 90s with the apostrophe implies that there's some sort of ownership. So you could say the everything I'm trying to give as an example of when you would use the apostrophe is not true. Maybe you just wouldn't use that. There's probably a way that you would. I'm just thinking like the 90s called. There's no apostrophe there because they don't own the call. A 90s era backpack, you'd still just use the S because it's not, you're saying 90s era backpack, like it came from that era, not the 90s owned it. Can't figure out a way. There's probably one. Let me know in a comment if you can think of one. But in most of these cases, I'm thinking don't use the apostrophe. A's, like straight A's, shouldn't have an apostrophe, though you're going to see it a lot. And I think sometimes different style guides will recommend that you do use an apostrophe here, even though it's not grammatically correct, just to set apart the S from the A. So, this is one where grammatically you don't use the apostrophe. It's correct not to use the apostrophe. However, different style guides may ask you to do it just to help set apart the two things. Really confusing. But basic level is don't use the apostrophe in either of these cases. Oh, yeah. I was supposed to do that earlier. No contractions. Okay. At the sentence level, now we're moving up a little higher. Try to use active voice whenever possible. Active voice is, well, it's right here. Passive voice is the results of the experiment were that men held the door for women more often than for other men. It's passive voice. It's not active. Active voice is down here. It says, early studies assert that men hold the door more often for women than for other men. It's shorter. It makes a little bit more sense. And, it's just a little bit more interesting because it doesn't sound quite as boring. It's active voice. There's a lot of studies that show, well, there's two things. One, people like to read active voice more. It tends to keep people more engaged. That's one result of some studies. And number two, these are some psycholinguistic studies, are that it actually takes more cognitive effort to read a passive voice sentence than it does to read an active voice sentence. And the reason for that is the results of the experiment were, and then you kind of have to hold in your brain the results of the experiment. And then okay, so we're looking at an experiment. Tell me what's going on. You sort of have to do that with the other one. The studies assert that men hold the door more often for women than for other men. But, this is not the best example of how active voice gives you more cognitive effort, but it does. We can look at some examples, but essentially don't use it. More cognitive effort, and people tend not to like to read it as much. What you want is flow. There's two things you want when you're writing, right? We talked about you want to convey your ideas. That's why you're writing, to convey your ideas as clearly as possible. But the other thing that you want to do is promote reading flow, because your reader isn't going to read what you're writing or take it in as easily if you can't give them some sort of flow. So when they're reading, they need to just read effortlessly. And if you can keep your sentences in active voice, that helps keep the reading effortless. So if it's for an instructor, they're probably going to give you a better grade because they read it really quickly. They understood everything. They didn't have to go back. A+. If it's for, you're writing a research report, you want people to read it because you want people to cite it. And probably you have something important to add to science, to the body of science. So you want people to be able to read it quickly and understand what it is and not have to agonize over it. They might just stop reading it if they have to agonize over it. If you're writing for policy, same thing. You want people to read what you're writing. Basically, anytime you're writing anything, including emails, the easier you can make it for your reader, the better. Because you're not writing something for people not to read it. Right? Otherwise, don't write it. Okay. Next idea here is keep your sentences in line with the flow of time. This is sort of... It can kind of come into active voice, but you can do this in a passive voice way where it just doesn't kind of link up with the flow of time. So one example is not in line with the flow of time is to Clifford, Emily threw the ball. And Yeah, that works. It makes sense. Or you could say Emily threw the ball to Clifford, and that keeps it a little bit more like in line with the flow of time. As humans, we live in a world with time, right? And so, I don't know, some of the current theoretical physics theories say that time might not exist. Like everything's happening all at the same time. I don't even understand how that could be because I'm a human that lives in time. And we're all humans that live in time. And so our experience is basically like one thing happens before another. There's a cause and effect. And like whatever's going on with physics can happen with physics. But we're writing papers for humans. So keep it in line with what's actually going on. So Emily threw the ball to Clifford. Well, the ball starts somewhere. It's going to start with Emily. And then she's going to have to do something. So she's going to throw it. So Emily throws the ball. Emily throws the ball to Clifford. So the ball moves through the air and then it goes to Clifford, who catches it. This is Clifford the big red dog. He's going to catch it in his mouth. Emily's the owner. If you read these, you know. But anyway. The only exemption to this is like if you're going to say to Clifford, Emily was nothing more than a pitching machine. So you could change it that way. That sentence doesn't have much to do with the flow of time. So what I want to highlight here is like I'm not saying don't ever say to Clifford, comma. You can definitely use that style of writing, but maybe not if you're describing something that's happening through the course of time. Okay, another idea at the sentence level is just don't overfill your sentences. This is not Chiba Hut, although that sandwich looks great. I could totally go for a sandwich right now. There's a lot of meat. That bacon on there too? Anyway. Yeah, I feel like I know what I'm having for dinner. Anyway, don't overfill your sentences. I was going to say sandwiches. Do overfill your sandwiches. Don't overfill your sentences. If there's too much information, like even if you can construct the sentence in a way that's not a run-on sentence, it's grammatically correct, everything's fine with it, it can just be too confusing. It could just be at a point where your reader is getting tired of holding too much in their memory. Their working memory's filling up. I'm done. I can't understand what this sentence says. So you want to make short sentences. Those are also called Hemingway sentences. And that is going to take me to this. This is the Hemingway app, which you can get to. This is a link. So if you have these slides, you can click on it. If you don't have the slides, you can go to https://for.hemingwayapp.com. You can also just Google Hemingway app because Google works. And what you do is you put in your writing. You can paste your entire paper in, and it will tell you things. Some of the things it's going to tell you is, are your sentences too long? Most of my sentences are too long. They're not even hard to read. They're very hard to read. I copied this from a paper that I wrote, and it's making me wonder if I should like go back and edit the entire paper. They're too long is basically what it's saying. And you know what? I think they might be right. This sentence is like a little over 3 lines long. This sentence is 4 lines long. Oh my god. This is a 3-sentence paragraph and it's that long. I think I do need to edit this. It's way too long. So it'll show your adverbs. You maybe don't want to have so many adverbs. I would say, let's take a look at mine. Functional biases help observers rapidly synthesize. That's okay because we want to show that it happens fast, ecologically useful. That's fine. That actually means something in the area that I'm writing. Perceptually functional, same thing. Physically measurable. So we're just distinguishing perceptual from physical here, so I think that's okay. Typically perceived. That's okay. Typical is okay. Now, greatly, I might actually want to take that one out. If a series of several harmonic overtones adds a single partial that is greatly mistuned, I could delete it. I could totally delete it and it would be fine. A partial that is mistuned is like means the same thing. See? Can happen. I publish all the time. I even write fiction stuff, and and I've edited this a few times too. So it's useful to look at this. It'll also show you uses of passive voice, and I tried not to do it, but I did. This may be classified as a misperception. Yeah. Or if all the overtones are produced by the same sound source. Huh. Well, I feel good that I don't have tons of passive voice. Just that, like, 2 instances in that one sentence. So, I'll have to look at that. 2 phrases have simpler alternatives, multiple and however. I'm cool with however. That's fine. Multiple physical factors can synthesize various physical factors. I wonder what their... This is an image, so I can't click on it and see what their suggestion is. And then 0 of 10 sentences are hard to read because 9 of 10 sentences are very hard to read. And that, I don't know, is that a function of just what I'm writing? It could be. The readability is postgraduate, which is, who I'm writing for. But I would prefer if anybody could read my papers, not just people who have gone to graduate school. So anyway, my whole point here is this is a really good tool. If you want to pop your stuff into this and take a look for adverbs, passive voice, phrases with simpler alternatives, and how many sentences are too long, you should do it. It'll make your stuff easier to read. Hemingway's a great author, and his sentences are like 1 line long at most. Sometimes 2 if you have to. Let's continue talking about sentences. Try to vary the length of your sentences. I know I just said keep your sentences short. That's true. But you also don't want them to all be like 5 words long. So you want to kind of vary it up, and this is a little bit more of a high level thing, right? So like if you are struggling to just get the ideas on the page, don't even worry about sentence length and how you're varying it. Get your ideas on the page. Keep your sentences short because that'll help you organize your thoughts to put it on the page. But don't even worry about varying your sentence length if that's where you're having trouble with. If you are a more high-level writer, maybe think about varying the length of your sentences. You could have one that's like 2 lines long and then follow it with one that's a couple words long. That just kind of breaks up stuff and helps emphasize things that are important. It's okay to break down a long statement into a shorter, more easily understandable one in a second sentence. So, women are more apt to hold doors for others. Let me go back and just kind of like tell you something here. So, early studies assert that men hold the door more often for women than for other men. These early studies, this is an actual experiment I did with my Psychology 290 class, where we would just go to the MU and watch people holding the door. That then turned into a study where we actually had people do it experience. So that's an observational study, which is okay. An observational study is fine, but you can't control things like how close is the person following, the gender of the person following, the gender of the person that you are following. So then what we did was we had people follow at about 6 feet. And they'd walk at about the same distance behind people. We would have people following that were different genders. We'd have them following people that were different genders, or at least presented as different genders, and looked at how that shook out. And it's a little different, actually, than what the early research said, which was just that men are going to hold the door more often for women than other men, and that women will hold the door more often for men than other women. That is not what we found, because all of these papers thought that it was like just a reproduction kind of thing. You're going to hold the door for somebody so that they see you naked later, which is not what we found. Basically, what we found was, you could say it in this long way that I'm saying it to you. We found that men were more likely to hold the door for women than for other men. But what we found was women are going to hold the door equally for men and women. And then you would go and use this short sentence after all that and say, in essence, women are more apt to hold the doors for others. There you go. And that's what we found. It has nothing to do with like a reproduction dating aspect thing. It just kind of says like maybe women are nicer. So they're going to hold the door pretty much equally often for men and women. Now, our studies also showed that even though men were more likely to hold the door for women, they did not hold the door for women as often as women did for anybody else. So men kind of suck, but they will hold it more often for women. And there's other things that change this. We haven't published this yet. There needs to be more research into it, but whatever. We're talking about writing. And what you want to do is throw in a short statement like this just to highlight what you've said in a long couple sentences. In essence, women are more apt to hold the doors for others. Hold doors for others. You want people to read everything you've got. You want to summarize what you have so that they don't have to do it, right? You don't want your reader to be sitting there reading this long thing and then have to stop reading and think to themselves, so what I just read said this. You want to do the work. You want to say, look, here's all the stuff you need to know. In essence, women are more apt to hold doors for others. And you want your reader to go, okay, if I can remember all that, great. And if I can't, you just told me the more important thing that you want me to know. Done. There's flow for the reader. And that's what you want. Remember, you want your reader to have the easiest job ever. A good writer makes it easy for the reader to continue reading. Another one is let it slop. So you want to write sentences that are similar to a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. A good peanut butter and jelly sandwich is like dripping. It's making a mess. You don't just want to eat it without something between it and your pants, because you're going to get peanut butter and jelly all over your pants. Although, recently I found out not everyone enjoys a peanut butter and jelly sandwich that is this way. That's weird to me. I like them super juicy. And hopefully, well, I don't care what you like. You like what you like. Whatever. But hopefully this at least makes sense to you. That some people like a super juicy peanut butter and jelly sandwich. And this is similar to that. Let your ideas slop. I don't want you to let your sentences slop. I want your sentences to be really crisp and to the point. But I want your ideas to slop around. What I mean by that is, let's go back up to that previous sentence. In essence, women are more apt to hold doors for others. Well, that's a slop of an idea, because you just talked forever about this research study about door holding. And the idea is going to slop into the next sentence to sum everything up. You want like a big plop of peanut butter and jelly in one area, which basically means you want one paragraph to be the same idea. Different sentences in there, but they're all kind of working together to create one paragraph that explains something with a little summary at the end of that paragraph. Unless you're explaining something that's so long you need two paragraphs, but you always want to end the idea with another summary of that idea. It's kind of like each paragraph. Let me hold that thought, because we're not at the paragraphs yet. But let your ideas slop into the next sentence. Okay, in your sentences, don't quote anything. Don't ever quote. When you're doing science, don't quote. If you are writing... If you're writing a research paper, don't quote. If you're reporting data that you've collected, don't quote. When can you quote? Policy stuff you might be able to quote. And so we'll let that slide, because when you're doing policy stuff, there are people that write things and you want to quote directly from certain people. Sometimes politicians or science communicators may have ideas that you do want to quote directly from, but here's the thing, you want to use it sparingly. Try not to quote super often. It's kind of jarring. It takes you out of what you're reading, and so you don't want to quote very often. Only do it when it's really, really, really appropriate. Like if somebody said something really great, like I can't even think of anything right now, but like a I don't know, like a JFK speech or something. He was really well known for giving great speeches. You might want to quote something from that. You might want to quote exact things from court cases, possibly. But other than that, you don't quote. You want to keep your voice in the paper, control the length of the sentences, control that it's short sentences. When it's a quote, you can't do that. And quotes just kind of, like if it's a long quote, you've got this block quote thing that's set off from the rest of the page, and it's like, it's so hard to read. So anyway, try not to quote. And again, if you're writing a research paper, don't quote. Don't do it. Do not quote. Try to keep your author's names in parentheses. It's not always going to be possible, and there's times when this doesn't work. But make your subject the research and the findings, not the people who did it. So you're going to want to say something like, Patton observed that E sounds higher than Don't do it. I mean, like, as much as I can be a narcissist when it comes to my science work, and I would love everybody to know my name and the research I've done, like, it's not good writing. So don't do it. Don't even make an exception for me if you're citing my work. It's fine. Just put me at the end in parentheses. That's fine. A footnote to history. It's cool. You want to say E sounds higher than Boom. And then say Patton 2017. First of all, look how much shorter that is. We've removed Patton observed that. It's all gone. E sounds higher than Done. Short sentence, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 words. And then you can throw the name in the parenthetical documentation. People can look at that if they want. If that's a paper that they're interested in, they can look at it. If they're not interested in it, they're just going to continue on with what you're writing with that little sentence. E sounds higher than Great. Done. Try to keep your author's name in parentheses just like this. You really want to just focus on, like, you're not writing a history of science paper. You're not chronicling all these researchers who did things. They don't matter, basically, for what you're doing. Their findings do, and they do in the general scheme of, like, life because they're doing cool research, but they don't matter in your paper. Times when this is not true are if you are focusing on one person for a bunch of paragraphs. Like if you're like, this person's work really pushed forward this entire discipline. Okay, cool. Now you've moved to where your subject is the person. Other times when this is not true, policy papers, you might want to call out who said different things. Sometimes there's writers that give a lot of thought to different topics, so you want to mark out who it is. Sometimes there's just figures that are, we give different weight to in different domains, so you might want to call out who it is. That's fine. Totally fine. But in general, if you're writing a research report about data you've collected, no way. Just keep your focus on the data. Okay, at the paragraph level, paragraphs don't have to be 5 to 8 sentences. Like, we have totally learned this in school. All your teachers are like, oh, paragraphs are 5 to 8 sentences. No more, no less. Hey, that's not true. They need a topic sentence and some supporting ideas. But if you do that in 3 sentences or 16 sentences, that's okay. 16 might actually be a little long. Like, use your judgment about when you want to break up the paragraphs. But my point is, don't hold yourself to what people have taught you about how long a paragraph is in the past. It needs to be as long as it needs to be. And that's basically it. Always begin with the topic sentence. And the topic sentence is like a little This is what I was going to say when I said hold that thought. Remember the 5-paragraph essay back in probably high school, middle school, high school, the 5-paragraph essay? Maybe even grade school. I actually don't remember. But whatever. 5-paragraph essay is. Your first paragraph kind of introduces the topic, and it says the next 3 things you're going to talk about, and then that's the first paragraph. Then the second paragraph is that first idea you had that you're going to talk about, introduced in the introduction. Second paragraph is that second idea. Third paragraph is the third idea, and then you have a conclusion paragraph that sums everything up. And there you go. 5-paragraph essay. You should kind of think of all of your individual paragraphs as little 5-paragraph essays. They don't have to be, again, 5 sentences, but they should be organized in that same basic structure. The topic sentence is kind of the introduction to the idea within the paragraph. Let me jump back and show you what I mean. Okay. Oh, I can't. Shoot. I can't highlight it because it's just a picture. One strong acoustic natural regularity is harmonicity. That's my topic sentence. Every single thing that comes after this is going to be evidence for why it's a strong natural regularity. It doesn't matter if you understand what natural regularities are, harmonicity, or anything like that. It doesn't matter. But what you can tell from this is I am introducing this idea. One strong natural acoustic regularity. One strong acoustic natural regularity is harmonicity. The idea here is I've probably already introduced what a natural regularity is. I've already talked about acoustic natural regularities, and I'm now saying like one of these is this. And the rest of the paragraph is evidence for what I've just said here. So, due to the physics of our world, resonant sound sources tend to produce overtones that are near integer multiples of their fundamental frequency. This is it. It highlights what I'm saying here. It's evidence for what I'm saying. And then this end sentence right here: the perception of 2 independent acoustic sources is more probable and more functional in typical real world settings. It just kind of like there's a lot of intermediate words about what I'm talking about, but this is highlighting again that it's a strong acoustic natural regularity. So you start with a topic sentence. This is the topic sentence. Up here, another strength of the theory is how it handles illusions. Okay, so the rest of this paragraph is going to be a strength of the theory of natural regularities and how it pertains to illusions. That's a topic sentence. That's what you want to do every time. Topic sentence. Don't change ideas within a paragraph. You've introduced a topic sentence, and you need to stick with all the ideas that go with that topic sentence. When you change ideas, you change paragraphs. If you've got 2 sentences that pertain to one idea, and your third sentence is a different idea, that's a different paragraph, man. Totally different. Probably you should go back and make sure that the paragraph with only 2 sentences has a topic sentence, because probably a 2-sentence paragraph could use a topic sentence to introduce those next 2, and then you're good. If you just have a topic sentence and then one supporting sentence, maybe you need to do more research and have more supporting ideas, or cut that idea entirely. But, case by case, it just seems like 2-sentence paragraph. This isn't going to happen very often. Don't change ideas within a paragraph. Do allow your ideas to slop into the next paragraph. So reference what you've talked about before. Again, let me go back. Another strength of the theory. So this is letting the idea slop of what I had in the previous paragraph. I'm talking about strengths of the natural regularity theory. So the previous paragraph is one strength of it, and this paragraph is another strength of it. I don't need to reintroduce anything. I'm letting the ideas slop over, and that's what you want to do. Okay, vary the lengths of your paragraphs. This is another high-level thing. Again, if you're struggling getting ideas out, just write paragraphs. Doesn't matter how long they are. Try to keep the flow of time here, too. Same idea, humans exist in time, so if you're writing about a bunch of stuff throughout history, Make it in the line of history. You don't want to go through and it's like 1800s, 1900s, 2000s. By the way, this happened in 1960. What? So confusing. I was listening to a podcast that did this. They'd like go through a timeline and then they'd say, but then 20 years before, and you're like, whoa, man. I'm so confused. I think they needed like a timeline. But you can't do that on a podcast, so what are you going to do? Anyway, keep things in the flow of time. You want to use transition words as often as possible. Some of these transition words are, however, conversely, along the same lines. On the other hand, later, all these different things. You can Google transition words and just go freaking nuts making transitions. Transitions are great, though. They really enhance flow. They just keep people in the world they're in. Always use an Oxford comma. I don't know why I've got this at the paragraph level. That should be in the sentence level. But do it. Oxford comma is where you put the comma before and, if you have a list. So you're going to put on shoes, socks, and pants. Probably not in that order. But shoes, comma, socks, comma, and pants. That's an Oxford comma. If you don't use the Oxford comma, it's just shoes, comma, socks, and pants. And that's weird. The reason why the Oxford comma is great is because what if you're listing the sandwiches you've got, and you've got Italian, peanut butter and jelly, roast beef, ham and pineapple. Well, here you go. If you're using an Oxford comma, you go Italian, comma, peanut butter and jelly. There's no comma there, so I know that those two go together as one sandwich, comma, roast beef, comma, ham and pineapple. I know that there's 4 sandwiches. Oh, comma, and ham and pineapple. Okay. If you're not using an Oxford comma, it's going to look like Italian, comma, peanut butter and jelly, comma, roast beef and ham and pineapple. All in one sandwich. Roast beef and ham and pineapple? I don't know if it's roast beef and ham and pineapple, or is it roast beef and ham and pineapple? Or do you just not know how to use commas because you were already in a list and it's actually a roast beef, ham, and pineapple sandwich? Like, you see how crazy things get without a comma. It's chaos. It's chaos. So just always use the comma. Okay, here's some other stuff. Try to avoid rhetorical questions. It's okay to have one. But don't have a ton. It's interesting. I know why they're used, because you want to pose like, hey, let me put you in this situation. Like, here's this going on. What would happen? And again, I think one is good. It's really nice as your like first hook into, like in your intro. It's cool. It's a nice device. But when you have too many of them, maybe you're overusing the device. But so again, one, cool. But don't have too many. Make an outline. This sounds dumb because we all did this in grade school. Like, we always did I can remember like the outline that we had to do. We'd come up with a concept and we'd draw all those little like things. That's not how I do my outlines now. I do them more like in line because I kind of know where I want to put things, but I do them. I've been writing forever and I still make outlines. Like, it sounds stupid. You're like, I'm an adult. I don't really need to do an outline. I kind of know how to organize my ideas. Not true. It's hard to organize ideas. Because when you make the outline, you're thinking through your ideas and you're not worrying about what you're writing yet. You're just thinking about ideas. And then another idea comes to you and you go, oh yeah, this needs to go up here. So you like scratch out what you wrote or like write a thing and put an arrow between some things. And that's cool. You can do that. When you're writing, If you're doing it on the fly, you kind of think of another thing and you're like, oh, that needs to go back up here. So you go back up and you add it in. But look, you've ruined the flow because your brain isn't in the place where you were when you were writing where that new thing needs to go in. So the transition's going to be weird. You didn't let your ideas slop. It's going to seem like it came out of nowhere. If you're a good editor, you can make it fit. But if you don't have to do all that, if you don't have to do that editing, you're making it easier on yourself. So an outline is going to make it easier for you as the person who's coming back doing the writing later. It's going to make it easier for your reader. It's going to save time. It's great. It's totally great. It's kind of like a map on how you want to navigate through your own ideas. Don't agonize over getting it right in the first go. Let's talk about Hemingway again. He had this saying that was, write drunk, edit sober. I don't know if you are an age that you can do this, but if you are, maybe you want to try it out. I do it, especially if I'm having, writer's block on how to start something. You kind of need to get out of your own head. Whatever way you want to do that, you should. If you need to go for a run, just to kind of like break the ideas out, you're going to come back and you're going to feel refreshed, great. If it's late at night and you just need to go to bed and start earlier in the morning, do it. If it's too early in the morning for you and you need to do something else and come back later, do it. If you need to drink and get the words out, do it. You just need to get over your own blocks. Just put stuff on the page. As soon as you get stuff on the page, you can edit it. And it's so much easier to edit than it is to just put stuff on the page, especially if you're trying to get it right the first time. Just write. Just sit down and write. Make yourself write some words. They don't have to be perfect. In fact, you might change all of the opening thing that you have. You just got to sit down and do it. Or stand if you have a standing desk. And then the other thing is, here's the thing. If you put almost word vomit on the page and you turn in almost word vomit, here's the secret. Sometimes people don't turn in anything. They get a 0. If you turn in something that has not great coherence, but it looks like you actually sort of tried to do something, you are not getting 0. You're getting 50%, 60, 70. It depends on how word vomity it was. But, you might not be getting an A+, but you're not getting a 0. I've totally seen people that are good writers not turn things in on time because they're trying to do it right. They're like, I got to get it right. I can't write it. I just didn't have time to do this. They had time. They're just being perfectionists. Do you want a 0 or do you want at least 50% on that assignment and make it up later? Word vomit it out. Blah, blah, just do it. And come back and fix it later. Just make sure you put in time to edit it. If you put in stuff on a page and you come back and you halfway competently edit what you've got, you're probably getting a low B or higher. I'm just saying, you don't have to be a fantastic writer to succeed at a writing assignment. You just don't. All you have to do is communicate ideas somewhat decently. That's it. And the other thing is, I'll tell you this, there are people that are really good writers who don't ace writing assignments, because writing assignments aren't only about, can you wow me with how well you can write? They're about, can you convey the ideas that I ask you to convey in this assignment? So are you in 205 and you need to report some research on a communication disorder to me? Report the research on the communication disorder to me. If you aren't a great writer and you're kind of repeating phrases over and over, but you're communicating the ideas, that's an A. You've done the job. Are you in MED 320 and you're trying to explain one side of an argument or both sides of an argument? If something's ethical or not, or can you look at it from two different ways? Maybe it is ethical, maybe it's not. Well, what you need to do is not wow me with how eloquently you can explain why something's ethical. What you need to do is lay out principles of different ethical theories, show me why a situation that happens in the real world is either ethical or not, depending on different theories. And depending on who's looking at it and what it means for different situations. Right? So you don't have to be a good writer. If you're not a good writer, you can still get an A on the assignment by focusing on what you're supposed to do. Most scientists are not good writers. And I review a lot of papers. I'm actually going to tell you most scientists are bad writers. But they focus on the job. And the job is I need to tell them why I came up with this idea. I need to tell them what my hypothesis was. I need to tell them how I tested it. I need to tell them what the data showed. And I need to conclude it. What's the biggest message you need to take home? They don't have to be written well. It helps. It helps. So if you are a good writer, it helps to keep that up. And if you feel like you can develop that skill, it helps. So work at it. But my point is, it's not writing fiction. It's not writing even journalism. Sometimes you have to be a good writer to succeed. But here, when we're conveying ideas, you don't have to be good. You just have to hit the spots and do it in a way that people can follow what you're writing. So anyway, you can do it. Sometimes it's easier to find articles after the fact. If you are write the paper with your main articles in mind. You have some articles, you know what they say because you've read the background research or you've read the background incident and you've read what some people say about different ethical theories or whatever. Write your paper with that in mind, and you know that you need a citation somewhere, but you don't really want to break your writing flow to find that citation, so just put in a little mark that says find citation and just write your paper. And then when you get back, fill in the citation, maybe change a sentence that you wrote because the citation you found isn't exactly what you thought you'd find. Like, hopefully it's not just like what I wrote here is totally wrong. That shouldn't be the case because you've read the background research. So it's probably not going to be the case. If it is the case, you might need to reevaluate the whole ideas that you're writing about. So hopefully that's not what's happening. But sometimes it's easier just to mark where you need a thing, stay in the flow, keep writing, and then go back and find the things and tweak up little parts of the paper. Write drunk, edit sober. Okay, so here's some exercises for you. You're going to make these sentences better. My head is in the way of one of these, but that's fine. So the sentence says, Conway, Cowan, and Bunting, 2001, assert that working memory is the key to staying on track, namely that high working memory capacity participants are able to maintain focus better than low working memory capacity participants. And then there's two other sentences. Door holding is a very interesting topic. Door holding behavior has been shown to differ between men and women holders and men and women followers. Door holding has not, however, been assessed when the follower is carrying a heavy object. Does door holding behavior change when both men and women are followed by a woman carrying a cumbersome object? And last, in the lackadaisical springtime, bees tend to flock to the nearest and most odoriferous plants. In the harshly unforgiving winter, bees stay inside the hive and subsist on stored food. Make those better. Pause the video right here. Make these better. And when you come back from pausing it, I'm going to show you the way I made them better. And I'm going right now. So if you have to pause it, because here's the new ones. Okay, working memory capacity is key to maintaining the focus of attention. High working memory capacity participants are able to ignore their names in an irrelevant auditory stream than those with low working memory capacity. And then I just put the citation in. Compare that to, we start with the people. I'm using it here. Shortened it a bit. Okay, good. Next. Okay, that was where we were. Door holding behavior has been shown to differ between men and women, both as holders and when following a holder. It is unknown, however, if this behavior changes when the follower is carrying a heavy object. The current paper tests door holding behavior for both men and women when followed by a woman carrying a cumbersome object. So what I did was I let the ideas slop over. Door holding is a very interesting topic. I got rid of that entirely. Door holding behavior has been shown to differ, blah, blah, blah. Door holding has not, however. So I got rid of that second thing. Like, we don't need to say door holding again. And then the current paper tests door holding behavior. Okay, great. Next one. This one just has too many big words. In the spring, bees tend to flock to the nearest and most attractive plants. However, in the colder winter, bees stay inside the hive and subsist on stored food. You could probably have gotten rid of subsist. Like, now that I look at it, that's kind of a dumb word. It's fine. It's totally fine if you use it. I use it. Like, I didn't get rid of it because when I was doing this, I didn't realize maybe that was kind of a larger word. You could say live on stored food. Whatever. Let's talk about paraphrasing. I've got another video on paraphrasing that's just about paraphrasing, but it's important, so we'll talk about it here too. Never quote. We already talked about that. There's usually no reason. There, of course, are exceptions to it that we talked about. But really, never plagiarize. If you are between plagiarizing and quoting, quote. But don't plagiarize. Never, never, never plagiarize. Here's the thing. It's plagiarism if you copy a quote directly and then cite it, even if you don't put it in quotes. You have to put it in quotes for it not to be plagiarism. If you just get rid of the quotation marks, it's still plagiarism, even if you're citing it. So what you really should be doing most of the time is restate and condense someone else's work. This is called paraphrasing. You're summarizing and restating what someone else has said. It saves you space and time. It promotes flow because it's in your voice. And it protects you from accidental plagiarism. Like, if you're paraphrasing everything, you're not going to plagiarize because you're just restating what someone has said. Let's try it over here. Again, my head is in the way. Oh well. I feel like that lady's wearing my glasses. And she's drinking. See, I told you, right? Drunk, edit, sober. When searching their memory for categorical items such as animals or countries, humans move around their perceptual space in a way that mirrors the physical movements of foraging squirrels and hunting sharks. Many small jumps are made within a single category, and relatively few large intra-categorical jumps are made. That's one. 65% of low working memory capacity participants identified their name in the irrelevant auditory stream, while only 22% of high working memory capacity participants recognized theirs. This suggests working memory capacity is a key component to sustaining attention on a single task. And last, as sounds rise in pitch, they also appear to get louder. Additionally, timbre changes from the sound to the e sound produce perceptions of rising pitch and loudness. These three components of auditory stimuli often change together in nature. Thus, these illusions are likely to produce... Nope. These illusions are likely the product of this expectation. Paraphrase these. Pause right now and paraphrase. Hopefully, if you're pausing, you've already done it, because I'm moving on. Okay, here's some... I paraphrased these for you. You're condensing and you're restating. Look how much less text there is on the page. There's a lot less. So, humans search their memory with the same movements as animals foraging for food. Done. Done. Awesome. Working memory capacity is an important part of attention. Most participants with low working memory capacity heard their names in an auditory stream they were ignoring, but few participants with high working memory capacity heard their name. Okay, great. Easy to understand. Easier than this. And shorter. It only looks not shorter because I spelled out working memory capacity up there. Pitch, loudness, and timbre tend to change together. As pitch increases, so does loudness. The voice timbre of an phoneme is similarly associated with a low pitch and timbre, while that should say low pitch and loudness, while E is associated with high pitch and loudness. I made a mistake. Not timbre, but loudness. So you can see that these have been basically summarized or restated. That's paraphrasing. And, okay. Well, that's weird. I don't know why my PowerPoint just went away, but that's fine. It was at the end anyway. So usually I end on the last slide, but it's gone. So here's my background on my computer. And anyway, hopefully that's going to help you with your writing. There's a lot of other writing PowerPoints and videos in this playlist. So whatever playlist this is in, if you need more writing help, find them in the playlist. And I'll see you in the next video.